separate categories, and it's extremely important to keep them separate. The danger, of course, being that people will begin to in some way associate what Israel is doing, and we're talking about a brutal occupation and oppression of a people on the basis of their religion and ethnicity. People will begin to associate that with Judaism, which is absurd. You know, occupation, oppression, these things have nothing to do with Judaism. And likewise, to speak out against these things, to call out when we see violations of human beings' rights is not anti-Semitic. In fact, it's really in line with the tradition of social justice in Judaism that has really been the pride for Jewish people for a very long time. It is never anti-Semitic to speak out against anyone's rights being violated, no matter who they are, no matter who's doing it. And I know the kind of moral blackmail that is thrown at people for talking about this, especially non-Jews, people being called anti-Semitic, Nazis, etc. And I want to actually draw your attention to the fact that during this week of events, Palestinians have not actually been able to speak out. And that is because the context is such that a Palestinian person who comes up and says the same thing that I'm saying is completely dismissed. Because, of course, a Palestinian couldn't actually tell a story. And the idea that I, as a Jewish person, am invited all over the country and the world, really, to tell Palestinian stories because I'm Jewish. You know, what about Palestinians telling their own stories? I mean, this notion that this group is a little different, but so many audiences come specifically because I'm a Jewish person. What about the oppressed people themselves being able to speak out? And I think that what we see here this week is really testimony to that political climate, that Palestinians have been silenced. This is not, you know, something new. They've been saying this for decades, and they have been silenced. And I think we should always be taking a moment to focus on those Palestinian voices. They are not only the victims in this particular conflict, but they are also our leaders in finding change to it. So needless to say, as a Jewish person, I insist, I think it's crucial that Jewish people and really all human beings speak out against this idea of an ethnocentric nation, this idea of a nation in which rights are predicated on your religion and ethnicity. I reject the idea that I have a birthright, this idea of the birthright Israel, that I even have a birthright to a place that Palestinians were kicked out of. I reject the idea that in order to create a safe space for Jewish people, we have to create a whole new refugee diaspora population. I reject the idea that Israel even is a safe place for Jewish people. Has it succeeded? Is it a safe place for Jews? No, it's not. It's actually probably one of the most dangerous places I could go to as a Jewish person. Even if your only focus is Jews, which I think we should be focused on everybody. But even if that is your only focus, is it even achieving that goal? I invite others to join me in working for a place with equal rights for all peoples, no matter what their religion, no matter what their ethnicity. And I think that this really is our only chance as human beings for survival and coexistence in the future. Thank you very much. Shall we open up the floor to questions?
Thanks so much, Anna, for your amazing presentation. A couple of quick announcements before we break for question and answer. Ms. Anna Balser, in order to really illustrate and bring to life everything that she's been saying, I'd like to encourage you all once again to come to the Cross Cultural Center today at 2 p.m., which is in a couple of hours, and she'll be having music and photos to really illustrate what's been going on over there. And also, right after this presentation, she'll also be having a book signing right behind the wall over there. So you can check out her books. They have pictures of everything you need to see to, you know, really prove to you exactly what's going on.
Can I say a few words about that, actually?
Yeah, sure.
I did forget to mention my book, which is back there. And really what I have done, most of my work is now giving lectures in universities, and I usually have photographs and maps to illustrate. The maps really tell the whole story, and I think it really intensifies the message. So if you can get there too, that'd be great. Anyway, I am selling copies of my book, Witness in Palestine, A Jewish American Woman in the Occupied Territories. It's pretty much full color, lots of photographs, original maps, quotes, history, etc. And they're being used as a textbook also in a number of universities in case you're somebody who teaches on the subject. They're normally $27 at Barnes & Noble, but I'll be selling them for $15 to $20 here. So if you want one, get one for a discount.
All right, now we'll break for question and answers. Please try to keep the questions respectful and to the point. We want to get as many questions as we can. So if you have a question, raise your hand. Right there in the green.
Thank you very much. What kind of backlash have you experienced from the American Jewish community because of your actions speaking at events like this one today? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll repeat the question. What kind of backlash have I experienced from Jewish communities in this country for the work that I'm doing? The answer is, obviously, I'm not the most popular in mainstream Jewish communities these days, but the backlash is very much sort of the light version. What'll happen is that because I'm Jewish, because I'm young, a girl, Columbia, whatever, they'll never call me a terrorist. They'll say, oh, she's so well-intentioned, she is so naive, and, she's been misled, she's really, so there's a sense that somehow because I'm Jewish, I couldn't possibly act, that I must be well-intentioned, which of course I am well-intentioned, but it's an interesting thing that Palestinians who say the same thing are immediately demonized. So I consider the harassment that I receive, and I do receive a lot, sort of the light version of harassment, and it's the same in Palestine too. I mean, yes, my treatment as I fly into Palestine, for example, is always, I'm interrogated, I'm strip searched, I'm harassed as I come into the country, through venues controlled by the Israeli military. But after all this treatment, I get in. And Palestinians don't. And so, at the demonstrations, it's the same thing. It's not pleasant, but it's so much less than what Palestinians suffer every single day for being much less active many times. And so it's sort of a humbling thing to keep in mind when we talk about the attack that I'm under compared to what Palestinians are under.
Right there in yellow.
I'm a human rights activist, and while I disagree with a lot of what you said, I want to thank you for coming out here and sharing your perspective with us. I noticed you spent a large portion of your lecture today speaking about equality and human rights violations that Israel has committed against Palestinians. But you spent little or no time discussing the human rights violations that are committed by the Palestinian government, by Hamas, and the Palestinian Authority. Please discuss those violations with us.
Thank you. The question was, I've focused on human rights violations, but not those committed by Palestinians. Absolutely, there are human rights violations committed by Palestinians. In particular, attacks on civilians are not something that I condone at all. In fact, I think they're horrifying. I think they are crimes. I think we need to, I think we can examine these things and criticize them, but let's talk about how to get past them, how to change the situation. And I think if you look at the origin, for example, of suicide bombs, let's take. The first suicide bomb was committed in 1994. The occupation goes back to 1967. The Nakba was back in 1948. The occupation cannot be justified by suicide bombs given this kind of a history. So in other words, let me make my point. The violence that we see coming out of Palestinians cannot be taken out of context. We cannot expect a population that is surrounded by incredible violence to respond nonviolently. Maybe we can say that that is the only legitimate way. We can make that judgment, but let's be realistic. Let's talk about a population that has been surrounded by incredible violence and how you combat that. And you can look at analyses of violence by different populations throughout history, including, by the way, terrorism that was committed by Zionist gangs, as I'm sure you're aware of, before the creation of Israel. I can even read you a quotation by Zionists justifying terrorism in order to throw off the yoke of the illegal occupier. The point is we can't take these things out of context. And I think if Israel is really, I'm answering your question. I think if Israel is really serious about stopping these things, you have to look at those roots.
Are you aware that Hamas has destroyed humanitarian supplies of humanitarian aid that was sent in to help the Palestinian people?
Can you tell me the source of that information?
Check on that.
Can you, well, we have to use legitimate sources, obviously. So is it like a UN or...
A few weeks ago, school supplies that was going to be used to transport the food to the Palestinian people.
Can you give me a source of this information? Well, it would be good also for the people here. I mean, we can give the audience credit to do their own research.